Welcome into my in-game Void Titan build and guide. I'll teach you how to gear out this subclass to be most efficient for in-game hard content, specifically GMs. With this build, your teammates are going to love you. This is a super powerful support build that will continuously supply your team with overshields and supers and make even the hardest GMs that much easier. With this build, you can do some things that are just impossible without it. You can chain together supers over and over and over. In the gameplay you're seeing behind me, you can see the Andrew Owen chaining a Well of Radiance back to back with my Ursa Furiosa empowered Sentinel Shield, making so many orbs that I literally make way more orbs than kills throughout this run. What's amazing about this build is that it gets even better the harder the content, because the more damage you protect your teammates from, the more orbs and super you give back. In a heroic or adept and sort of Nightfall setting, this build does not work because there's not enough damage done to make it worthwhile. But as content gets harder, this build does better and better and better. We're building this around the Ursa Furiosa. You move faster while guarding. When Sentinel Shield is active, guarded damage converts to super energy when the super ends. However much damage you guard your teammates from is directly equal to how much super you get back. Up to 50% of your super back. What is not written in this armor perk is the fact that you make so many orbs that everybody on your team also gets their super back, or almost all of their super back. So you can go directly from a well to a Ursine guarded super, back to back to back to back. Let's look at the subclass. First off, we have the Super Sentinel Shield. We use this to guard our teammates from damage and thus making orbs upon orbs and getting our super back with Ursa. Also, allies can shoot through the guard and it buffs their damage. So the drawback to this is that you do lose out on one guardian yourself doing any damage during that phase. But the benefit of completely protecting your team and getting everybody's super back is just so great in GMs that it is totally worth it. I use Rally Barricade because it has a 10-second shorter cooldown than Towering. That really helps in the play loop and to make sure ourselves and our team can have an overshield when needed. I like Strafe Lift or Catapult Lift depending on just how I feel that day. For GMs, I like Shield Throw. Shield Bash is a little too up close and personal for Grandmasters and the amount of damage that enemies do, so I like to use Shield Throw where I can be a little further back and throw it. It's really only good for killing smaller red bars and giving you a little bit of overshield. That's why I don't prioritize strength for this build. I've chosen Vortex Grenade for its ability to pull enemies together and do great damage, and it lasts a long time. For the aspects, I go with Bastion. Cast your super to grant overshield to nearby allies. Casting your barricade grants overshield to yourselves and nearby allies and empowers it, enabling it to slowly regenerate the overshield of allies bunkering behind it and extend their overshield duration. This is huge. I don't like to Void Titan without this. The overshield is just so great because it gives you a 50% damage reduction while you have an overshield active, as well as just an extra health bar. While you have an overshield or inside Ward of Dawn, your grenade charges significantly faster. You have increased melee range and damage, and melee final blows extend the duration of your overshield. You gain an additional shield throw while in Sentinel Shield. So for this, it's really for the grenade recharge, significantly faster. I just find that to be a little bit more beneficial than Controlled Demolitionist. This is hard to proc in a Grandmaster setting. You can, and you can really go back and forth between these two. I just like the consistency of getting my grenade back faster, so I choose Offensive Bulwark. The other thing that this does running Offensive Bulwark instead of Controlled Demolitionist is that I don't have to run any Void weapons. I can run solar weapons or whatever weapon. Don't have to play into the volatile or anything like that, but I still get a benefit. But if I were to take Controlled Demolitionist, I would want to take Void weapons. I would be a little trapped in that Void cycle. If it's a Solar Surge, I can use solar weapons with Offensive Bulwark. For fragments, got Echo of Undermining. Your Void grenades weaken targets. This weakens them 15%, which is a big debuff. It is minus 20 discipline, but I make up for that in ways with other mods on the armor to make it feel like I have 100 discipline. And then Echo of Starvation, picking up a Void Breach or an Orb of Power grants Devour. This is huge. This is what makes any Void class viable in in-game content. is Echo of Starvation and Devour. The power of Devour is incredible. It is minus 10 recovery, but I feel like 70 recovery is the sweet spot. Anywhere from 70 to 100, you can't really feel the difference, especially if you have Devour. Devour isn't as reliable in a GM context, but with all the crazy orb creation we're making with supers back-to-back, we do have Devour up most of the time. Echo of Obscurity is a must for me in Grandmasters. On the Titan, finisher final blows grant invisibility and plus 10 recovery. To be able to go invisible when needed is a must in order to maybe revive a teammate or get somewhere, or some different mechanic we need. To be able to go invisible is a huge plus. Now that we know the exotic and the fragments we want to use, we can pick our armor pieces, and I always like to do this on d2armorpicker.com. If you don't know what D2 Armor Picker is, then I suggest you watch my previous Strand Titan video, where I also go over how to use d2armorpicker.com. It's literally a game changer. For this build, I prioritize resilience, and then discipline, and then recovery. Like I said, I like to run with at least 70 recovery, but can't really feel a huge difference from 70 to 100. And then finally, as much intelligence as we can with the leftovers. And this, I just so happen to be at 100, 70, 70, 70, which I feel pretty comfortable on. Let's run through the mods. Obviously, put the stat mods in to get to where you need to be on your stats. And then for the helmet, you need a heavy ammo finder. I like to run the heavy ammo scout to help my teammates out. Whichever siphon for whichever weapons you have equipped currently. If you're running a void primary, then use a void siphon. If you're running a solar primary, then use a solar siphon. For your gauntlets, firepower. Since we do get grenades back pretty quick, I like to use this to create more orbs, to create more devour, to create more supers, all that stuff. Font of focus. So when we have an armor charge, we get plus 30 discipline with just one of these equipped. And so it's really, when we have an armor charge, we have 100 discipline. Grenade kickstart to just get that grenade back a little bit faster. So my gauntlets are purely focused on getting my grenade back and using it to make orbs. And then my chest piece, charged up, at least one charged up so you can carry one more stack, so you can have armor charges for longer. For whatever threat the GM is, you want to run at least one resistance mod in that. I was doing last, there was a void threat, so a void resistance mod. And then in GM'd, concussive dampener is huge. There's a lot of splash damage that will kill you behind cover or things like that. So concussive dampener is great for that. For the legs, one stacks on stacks to get an additional armor charge when you pick up an orb. And then two weapon surges on whichever primary and heavy weapons you're using. So if you're using void, then two voids. If you're using solar, then two solar. If you're using arc, then two arc. Things like that. Then for the mark, Reaper is huge to spawn an orb after you put your barricade down. The next kill you do will spawn an orb, and just more orbs, more super, more devour, the whole play cycle. One time dilation to up your armor charges, each to last 15 seconds. This makes these all together just give you a lot more armor charges and make them last a long time, so you get your font of focus to last a while, and you get your surges to last a while. And then finally, Bomber, reduce grenade cooldown when using your class ability. So these all play together to make the play loop pretty seamless. And then on the Scepter, Shatter Orbs is huge, just to make more orbs when breaking a damage shield of whatever type. Volatile Flow if you're using void weapons. Bricks from Beyond if you're using void weapons. And Prismatic Transfer for a little bit more damage after you cast your super, which is great. Finally, for the weapons, right now I'm set up to take care of Unstoppable and Overload champions with my Riptide with Chill Clip. The Slow from Chill Clip will take care of Overloads, and the Freeze or Shatter effect will take care of Unstoppables. Layman Arc will take care of Overload champions. And then I also, I try to pair these to match Void and Void or Solar and Solar or Arc and Arc or whatever, so then I can stack my weapon surge into two instead of having one and one. It wouldn't be too terrible if I had to run one Void, one Solar. So this is how I would set up if I were running a GM that had a Void surge and had Overload and Unstoppable champions. But if I were going to step into something with Barrier and Unstoppable, then I would probably go with an Arbalist. Do something like this. Arbalist to take care of Barrier, and a Scout Rifle to take care of Unstoppables. I like this Vouchsafe with Rapid Hit Explosive Payload. Another setup I like to run would be a Pulse and a Scout, just double primary, and an exotic heavy. One thing I would stay away from, if your team is using rockets, you don't really want to be the Gallahorn user, because when you do pop your Sentinel shield, you cannot give everybody Wolfpack rounds. So if you're all running rockets, then I would suggest somebody else to run Gallahorn, and you can stick to something like this. Don't underestimate Lemon Arc. It is my favorite bow in the game. Thing is amazing in GM. So I looked at Unstoppable and Overload. I looked at Barrier and Unstoppable. Let's look at Barrier and Overload. For that, I could go with something like this, with a Pulse Rifle and a bow, or I could even go with an SMG. Right here with this setup, I have all three, with Leviathan's Breath taking care of Unstoppable, my Funnel Web taking care of Overload, and my Pulse Rifle taking care of Barrier. It's not really ideal to have two primaries, but it isn't that detrimental either. But also, this really depends on your teammates and what they're bringing. If you're bringing in a Void Hunter with you, then you really don't need to worry about overloads too much because of all the suppression they can do. If you're bringing in any Strand, you don't really have to worry about Unstoppable too much because of all the suspend effects they can do. So probably my favorite way to run this, though, would be with Riptide, with Chill Clip, auto-loading, and a Lemon Arc. And then Retrofit Escapade is hitting super hard this season. I really like machine guns for just the ability to clear rooms of ads as well as do boss damage. There you have it, my Ursa Furiosa Void Titan build. Thank you so much for watching, for stopping in and taking the time to watch this video. And if you made it this far into the video, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed. I'm going to be having more and more content coming out, and I just really appreciate your support. Peace.